Most people believe power is found in the open in boardrooms, in cities, amidst the noise and the crowds. Machiavelli would find that amusing, because what you mistake for taking action is often the quickest path to losing control. He grasped a truth few ever will. The man who ventures out to conquer the world seldom returns with his soul intact. Conversely, the one who stays, who strategically isolates himself, starts to perceive the world as it truly is not a stage for performance, but a chessboard for strategic play. You've been conditioned to think that staying home equates to stagnation, laziness, or fear. That's because most people mistake stillness for weakness. Machiavelli knew that stillness is the predator's advantage before it strikes. It's how power gathers itself before it expands. Staying home is not a retreat. It's a consolidation. It is the silent, formative phase before the rise of an empire. When you deliberately step away from the world, you cease to play by its rhythm. Society operates on a tempo designed to keep you in a state of reaction. Work on this, post that, be seen there. Everyone is in motion, yet no one is truly arriving. By staying home, by willingly stepping outside that frantic rhythm, you cultivate a formidable advantage. You gain time that is exclusively yours, and time, not wealth or connections, is the ultimate currency of control. Every hour spent in stillness hones your perception. You begin to notice the superficiality of most people's convictions and the predictability of their desires. You start to see the machinery behind the mask, and once you understand the machine, you can begin to control it. Machiavelli would have argued that a prince must understand his city as both its architect and its observer. A fool rushes to rule before he has learned the rhythm of his people. The wise ruler remains behind his walls, listening, learning, and watching, discerning, who brings valuable information, who offers empty flattery, and who is plotting your home. Your solitude is your fortress. It is where you learn to interpret the whispers before they escalate into open conflict. But this is only true if you use it correctly. Most people use their homes to escape from reality. The Machiavellian mind uses it to dissect reality. When you are surrounded by your own walls, distractions fade, and the truth of your own mind begins to echo. This is where the real danger and opportunity begins. When you start to hear your own thoughts with clarity, you realize how much of your life was constructed around noise. People believe power is forged in public. But the truth is, power is built in private and merely displayed in public. It is the same principle by which soldiers are trained behind closed doors before they march through the city. The most dangerous individuals are often the ones who have been out of sight for a while. The quiet one, the one who stopped showing up. In their absence, a sense of mystery begins to form. And mystery, in Machiavellian terms, is a currency. It makes people talk, speculate, and ultimately respect. When they cannot predict your next move, they begin to fear you. When they cannot find you, their imagination fills the void. Staying home feeds that silence. It allows people to forget your past weaknesses while their imagination constructs your legend. But staying home is not easy. It forces a confrontation not with others, but with yourself. The outside world provides a constant stream of excuses to keep running. Conversations, errands, invitations, noise. At home, these excuses crumble. You are left alone with the mirror, and Machiavelli would have said that is where most people's courage fails them. The mirror shows you your own deceptions, how you've pretended to be moral, busy, loyal, or useful when, in reality, you have been driven by fear. Once you confront that fear, once you learn to sit with it without flinching, you become dangerous. Most people will do anything to avoid that internal confrontation. You, however, will have passed through it. That is why staying home is one of the most radical acts in a society addicted to exposure. They want you visible, constantly expressing, proving, and posting. Visible people are predictable people. They reveal their emotions, their opinions, and their vulnerabilities. The unseen, however, cannot be read and therefore cannot be controlled. When you stay home, you deny the world access to your patterns. You move into what Machiavelli would call the fog of the unseen. Your silence transforms into a weapon. Every message you don't reply to, every event you don't attend, every update you don't post it, all sends a single, powerful signal. I don't need you. And in the hierarchy of power, that is the most resonant message of all. Of course, there is a distinction between hiding and positioning. The Machiavellian doesn't vanish out of weakness. He vanishes as a calculated move. He withdraws not to disappear, but to create a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. People will rush to fill the silence with their own interpretations. He must be working on something. He must know something we don't. He must be improving. Whether these are true is irrelevant. What matters is that perception begins to work in your favor without you lifting a finger. You have outsourced your power to their imagination. And once people start imagining you as powerful, you no longer have to prove it. You've already won half the game. Consider how every great empire begins, not with expansion, but with walls. The Great Wall of China, the castles of Europe, the palaces of Florence, each ruler first fortifies their position, observes their surroundings, and only then acts. Machiavelli taught that control originates from containment. Contain your impulses, your environment, your interactions. Containment is power disguised as passivity. When you stay home, you practice the art of containment. You begin to decide what gets in, who is granted your time, what information enters your mind, and what energy you allow around you. The modern world has deceived people into believing that openness is a virtue. Be available. Be reachable. But availability is vulnerability. A ruler closes his doors. A fool keeps them open in the name of being accessible. Staying home also allows a person to perfect their narrative before it is revealed to the public. In the public eye, mistakes are magnified. Every stumble becomes gossip. Every trial becomes entertainment. Behind closed doors, you can fail without witnesses. You can rehearse your authority before it is ever displayed. Machiavelli believed that appearance is everything, but appearance must be perfected in private. The home becomes your rehearsal space, your war room. It's where you sharpen your words, discipline your habits, and plot your ascent without interruption. By the time you step outside again, your silence has already done the heavy lifting. They see you not as someone who is returning, but as someone who is emerging God. The irony is that the world will label you antisocial for it. They will say you are missing out. But missing out is precisely what you should desire, to miss the noise, the gossip, and the chaos that fragments your focus. While they trade their time for fleeting attention, you are trading your attention for mastery. And mastery, as Machiavelli knew, is the only true source of respect. Staying home turns every hour into a negotiation with yourself. You start to manage your own weaknesses as a ruler manages a court, identifying which impulses to trust, which to execute, and which to exile. Most people are servants to their distractions. You, in contrast, are learning to rule them. The world outside will always tempt you with the illusion of movement, as if motion itself equates to progress. But motion without direction is merely noise. Staying home helps you distinguish motion from meaning. You begin to act only when necessary, speak only when it serves a purpose, and move only when the move is decisive. This is how Machiavellian patience is forged, through the art of withholding. Withholding your presence, your opinions, your reactions. Because once you learn to delay the urge to react, you gain command over those who cannot. Every ruler must master restraint before they can achieve dominance. Restraint is the seed of timing, and timing is everything. Eventually, your home transforms from a cage into a citadel. While others use their rooms to scroll, you use yours to scheme. Every minute of quiet becomes a calculation. Every day of solitude strengthens your independence. You begin to realize how little you actually need, not because of minimalism, but because of control. Dependency weakens rulers. Detachment builds them. And nothing trains detachment better than stillness. Machiavelli's greatest advantage was his ability to think while others panicked, to observe while others reacted. That is what staying home gives you, the gift of detachment, the cold distance required to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. It is almost comical. The same people who call you lazy for staying home are the ones burning out in their chase for validation. They don't realize that you are building leverage in silence. They are spending their energy to be noticed. You are storing yours to strike when it matters. They think you have fallen behind, but Machiavelli would say you are ahead. Because while they are busy playing the game, you are studying its rules. The world rewards visibility, but it ultimately obeys invisibility. The unseen architect designs the stage. The actor merely performs on it. Staying home transitions you from a performer to a designer. It takes you out of the show and places you behind the curtain, where true control resides. And once you taste that control, you will never again crave attention. Attention is fragile. Control is eternal. The difference between the two lies in how you spend your silence. Most people waste their scrolling, waiting, and wishing. You will spend yours refining, building, and planning. You will start to sense that the less you do outwardly, the more your presence grows inwardly. People will begin to notice your absence, then your calmness, and then your results. That's when they will realize you weren't staying home because you were afraid of the world. You were staying home because the world was afraid of what you were becoming. When Machiavelli spoke of fortresses, he wasn't just referring to walls of stone and iron. He was speaking of the fortresses built within the mind. Your home becomes that mental fortress. Every hour spent alone sharpens your intuition. You start to notice how quickly others burn themselves out trying to stay relevant, how much energy they lose by reacting to every minor disturbance. When you stay home long enough, you realize how rare it is to encounter someone who is truly centered. The world outside is filled with people desperate to be seen. The world inside you is waiting for you to learn how to see yourself. Once you grasp that, the hunger for validation begins to dissolve, replaced by a quiet satisfaction that no amount of applause can replicate. Isolation, when utilized correctly, doesn't weaken you. It purifies you. It burns away the unnecessary. It strips you of the personas you have worn for public survival. You start to see the difference between who you are and who you pretend to be. And as Machiavelli would tell you, the more masks a person wears, the easier they are to manipulate. But the one who knows his own naked self, his impulses, his fears, his limits cannot be easily moved. Staying home forces you into that confrontation, and through it, you earn something the outside world can never provide. Self-command. You start operating from your own center instead of the shifting winds of others' opinions. And from that center, every decision becomes sharper, every reaction more deliberate, every move calculated. Most people avoid staying home because they fear irrelevance. They fear being forgotten. But Machiavelli would laugh at this fear because he knew that it is not irrelevance that kills power, but overexposure. The more people see of you, the less they value you. Familiarity breeds contempt. The king who walks the streets daily becomes just another man. The citizen who appears rarely becomes a myth. When you are always present, people stop wondering about you. When you vanish, they start imagining. And in politics, in business, and in life, imagination always carries more weight than reality. Staying home makes you a scarce commodity, and scarcity creates perceived value. People do not chase what is abundant. They chase what is absent. It is ironic, isn't it? You withdraw, and suddenly, people reach out more. They sense a change, a quiet confidence. They cannot explain it, but they feel it. You no longer appear as someone begging for inclusion. You appear as someone who has chosen exile. And there is something magnetic about that choice. Power always belongs to the one who could leave, but doesn't need to. By staying home, you flip the dynamic. You are no longer the one seeking approval. You are the one withholding presence. And human nature craves what is withheld. This is why Machiavelli's princes would retreat to their chambers for days, not because they had nothing to say, but because their silence made every word, when finally spoken, carry more weight. You must learn to weaponize your absence in the same way. But to truly benefit from solitude, it must be disciplined. Staying home without direction is mere comfort. Staying home with purpose is transformation. You must treat your space as a laboratory, not a hiding place. Every day, refine a skill, challenge a thought, question a belief. Read not to escape, but to dissect. Write not to express, but to structure your mind. Practice thinking for yourself, not as a rebellion, but as a preparation. Because once you re-enter the world, you will notice how little independent thought truly exists. People repeat, repost, and recycle. You will speak once, and your words will carry more weight than 1,000 of theirs, because yours originated from depth, not from noise. There is also an unexpected power in no longer needing to be entertained. The more comfortable you become in stillness, the more control you gain over your emotions. When you no longer require constant stimulation, you become immune to manipulation. Machiavelli understood that those who cannot sit in silence are easily ruled. Just keep them distracted. But the man who can find peace in an empty room is untouchable. He doesn't seek escape. He creates his own meaning. Staying home teaches you this emotional sovereignty. You begin to realize that boredom is not the enemy. It is the training ground for depth. Every moment you resist the urge to distract yourself, you strengthen your mind's ability to remain composed when the world tries to pull you apart. And make no mistake, the world will try. It rewards obedience disguised as participation. Be social, they say. Stay active. But what they mean is, stay visible enough for us to control you. Every system, political, economic, digital, depends on your constant involvement. The moment you disconnect, it loses its power over you. That is why solitude feels so dangerous to them. A person who can sit in silence cannot be easily manipulated. They start asking forbidden questions. They stop reacting to propaganda. They notice how much of society runs on fear rather than logic. Machiavelli's insight was simple, yet terrifyingly true. Rulers depend on distraction to maintain control. So when you stay home and cut out the noise, you reclaim that control. You stop being ruled. There is another layer to this, one that Machiavelli would have admired most. When you stay home, you begin to see patterns that others miss. You see people moving in herds, trends rising and falling, and opinions shifting like the tides. You realize how predictable the collective mind truly is, and once you can predict it, you can influence it. That is the true reward of observation, not just understanding, but influence. Not by shouting, not by fighting, but by quietly positioning yourself ahead of the curve. By the time everyone else reacts, you have already made your move. That is how the silent strategist always wins. He may appear reckless, but he is 10 steps ahead. And let's not ignore this. Staying home sharpens your perception of power itself. You begin to notice how every social dynamic mirrors a royal court. Every friendship has a hierarchy. Every group has a ruler. Every interaction is a subtle negotiation of dominance. When you are constantly surrounded by people, you are too absorbed to see it. When you pull back, you finally understand the game. You see who truly holds influence, who who merely pretends, and how most people's confidence crumbles the moment they lose their audience. That knowledge makes you immune to charm and intimidation, two of the most potent social weapons. Machiavelli would say, that is when you are ready to lead, because only those who no longer need to impress can command true respect. Staying home also allows you to reset your standards. The longer you spend away from the chaos, the clearer you see what is actually worth your time. You stop tolerating mediocrity disguised as connection. You stop seeking approval from people whose opinions hold no weight. You start to realize that solitude isn't loneliness. It's filtration. Every day alone filters out another layer of nonsense. By the time you step back into the world, you will find you no longer fit into most of it. And that is exactly the point. Power begins where conformity ends. The more you stay home, the more you separate from the rhythm of the herd. The world may call that isolation, but Machiavelli would call it purification. Then comes the shift. You stop staying home to hide and start staying home to build. You notice the difference between silence and stagnation. Your ideas begin to take form. Your routines harden into rituals. You realize you can wake when you want, create what you want, train your body, read for hours, think deeply, and plan months ahead, and no one can stop you. That is not laziness. That is sovereignty. The man who controls his time controls his destiny. And in a world where everyone's time is bought, borrowed, or stolen, owning your hours is the ultimate act of rebellion. The longer you stay home, the more of life's invisible rules you begin to see. Like how opportunity rarely knocks, but instead whispers, and only the still can hear it. Or how the person who reacts the least usually holds the most leverage. You begin to sense energy instead of just words, motives instead of messages. That is when staying home ceases to be a tactic and becomes a way of perceiving. You no longer need constant input to feel alive. You generate your own rhythm, your own meaning, your own direction. That is when you reach what Machiavelli might have called an internal monarchy, when you rule yourself as if you were your own state. But here lies the paradox that separates those who rise from those who fade in solitude. Most people retreat and never return. They mistake withdrawal for an escape. The Machiavellian retreats to sharpen his blade, not to bury it. Your time at home is not the end. It is preparation for the next strike. Like a general studying maps before a war, your stillness is about gathering precision. Because once you re-emerge, the world will not recognize you. You will move more slowly, speak less, and command more. And the same people who called you lazy for staying home will now call you mysterious, disciplined, and focused. They will think something changed while you were away. They will be right, but they will never understand what it was. The hardest truth about staying home is that, eventually, the silence may stop feeling peaceful. It may start to feel heavy. You will begin to wonder if you are being left behind. You will look at the lives flashing across your screen, everyone smiling, moving, winning, and you will question your stillness. But that is the final test of solitude, whether you can stand still while the world runs in circles. Machiavelli understood this kind of endurance. He knew that every ruler must be willing to be misunderstood in the short term to be respected in the long term. Power is never built on public consensus. It is built on private conviction. Staying home is how you prove to yourself that you can endure isolation without losing your identity. The modern world has made addiction look like ambition. People boast about being busy. They equate exhaustion with importance. But what they call progress is often just panic with a schedule. When you stay home, you begin to see through this illusion. You realize that most of what others chase, status, validation, applause, is nothing more than distraction in disguise. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You stop wanting to compete in their race because you recognize that it isn't heading anywhere meaningful. You begin to play your own game, with your own rules, on your own timeline. That is the essence of Machiavellian strength. Not rebellion against others, but mastery over yourself. But solitude has layers. The first is comfort, where you enjoy the quiet. The second is discomfort, where you begin to confront your own thoughts. The third is power, the moment you realize your thoughts no longer control you. Most people never reach the third layer. They escape the discomfort by rushing back into the noise. They need the world to drown out their own minds. But if you stay long enough, you begin to notice something strange. Your emotions become tools instead of triggers. Anger becomes energy. Sadness becomes reflection. Fear becomes data. You stop being a passenger to your psychology and start becoming its driver. That is when solitude becomes strength, when it grants you emotional precision. Machiavelli would call this the art of internal governance. Before a ruler can govern a state, he must first govern himself. He must know when to act, when to wait, when to appear generous, and when to conceal ruthlessness. These are not instincts. They are learned disciplines. And the only place you can truly learn them is in stillness. When you are surrounded by people, you adapt to their tempo. When you are alone, you create your own. You begin to move according to strategy instead of impulse. Staying home becomes your political education. Every emotion becomes a counselor, every silence a meeting, and every decision a decree over your own empire, the empire of one. Asterisk, there is a beauty to invisibility that is rarely discussed. When you are unseen, you are unmeasured. When you are unmeasured, you are unpredictable. And when you are unpredictable, you are free. Most people fear obscurity because they rely on the gaze of others to feel alive. But obscurity, when used correctly, becomes armor. It allows you to experiment, to fail, and to rebuild without consequence. No one is watching, so nothing can be weaponized against you. You become a ghost not dead, but untouchable. And as Machiavelli would tell you, there is no form of power greater than that. To influence from the shadows, to act unseen but still be felt. Do not confuse invisibility with disappearance. The difference lies in intention. Disappearance is defeat. Invisibility is design. The Machiavellian knows when to emerge, not when he feels ready, but when the timing serves him. Timing, after all, is the invisible thread that holds all strategy together. Staying home grants you that sensitivity to timing. You start to feel when the moment is ripe to strike. You learn to let opportunities mature instead of forcing them. The impulsive man acts. The strategic man waits. And in that waiting, you discover a truth most people never learn. That patience is not the absence of action, but the preparation for precision. But let's speak plainly. Staying home will not always feel powerful. There will be mornings you wake up questioning your purpose, days when the silence feels suffocating, and nights when you crave noise just to feel alive again. That is normal. Every strong individual walks through that valley. Machiavelli himself was exiled from Florence, stripped of his title, and publicly humiliated. Yet it was in that exile, in that isolation, that he wrote The Prince, the very text that made him immortal. If he had not been forced into stillness, the world might never have remembered his name. Your own solitude is no different. What feels like exile might just be the season in which you create something that outlasts the people who doubted you. The real purpose of staying home is not to isolate yourself from the world, but to insulate yourself from its illusions, to filter what deserves your attention from what does not. Every time you decline an invitation, you are saying yes to your own evolution. Every time you choose focus over fun, you are declaring independence from the collective trance. And here's the twist. Once you develop that discipline, you can go anywhere, do anything, and never lose yourself again. because you will carry your stillness with you. The fortress will no longer be made of walls. It will be built inside your mind. Eventually, you will start to notice something powerful happening. Your conversations will become quieter but sharper. Your presence will grow heavier. People will sense something different in you. They won't be able to name it, but they will feel it. It is the calm of someone who doesn't need approval, the poise of someone who is not chasing anything, the steadiness of someone who has built an inner world that no one can shake. Machiavelli said, "Men should either be treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries. For heavy ones, they cannot." Apply that wisdom to your own life. When you stay home and build yourself, you stop reacting to slight injuries. You become too composed to be provoked, too focused to be flattered. That is the ultimate revenge, indifference. Because the moment you no longer need validation, you become ungovernable. The world runs on control, social, emotional, financial, but all control depends on one thing: your reaction. The one who reacts the least rules the most. When you stay home long enough to master your reactions, you break free from every invisible chain society tries to wrap around you. You stop being a pawn on someone else's board and start becoming the player. Every quiet day in your room is a move that no one sees coming. Every moment of stillness is a storm being planned. That is what staying home really is. The art of becoming untouchable through preparation. You are not missing out. You are setting up. You are not hiding. You are gathering power. While the world exhausts itself chasing noise, you are becoming the kind of person they will eventually chase to understand the silence. And when you finally decide to step out, not to join them, but to lead, they will realize something Machiavelli always knew. The man who can rule himself doesn't need a throne. He already owns the world.